Good afternoon, all. Just going to give it till 3 o'clock and we'll start. Good afternoon and welcome to the Urban Charging, the Future of Urban EV Charging webinar. Today we'll be taking a delve into the EV strategy as set out by the City of York Council. Our panel today are Stuart Andrews, a Smart Transport Project Manager, Andrew Ledbetter, the Transport Project Manager, Strategy, and Lucy Atkinson, a Sustainability Project Manager. Just a few rules before we start. If you do have any questions, please do raise them in the Q&A function at the bottom of the panel, and we endeavour to answer as many as possible during the Q&A section later on. I will pass over now to Stuart Andrews, who will be leading the session.
Thanks, Connor, and hi to everyone. Looks like we have a very good crowd today, so thank you all for coming. Right, so it's quite an exciting time to be working in EV charging at York at the moment. We've been very successful recently in securing funding for a number of quite significant projects. We've also recently published our EV strategy, that was in March this year. And we've got a number of other projects ongoing that sort of link into our AV work, such as electric scooters and various transport modelling programs. But we're not going to touch on those today. We're going to concentrate on the EV charging strategy. We're going to look at how we've sort of developed the strategy, how we've put it together, and what we're hoping to achieve, and just some of the major projects we've got going on at the moment to deliver those objectives. So just before we get into the EV stuff, a few little bits of information about York to set the scene. We're quite a compact, small city. I mean, the city's only about 9 kilometres across with 210,000 residents, and that's about 83,000 households. This is quite important for later. About 20,000 of the homes in York do not have access to off-street parking, so they're either apartments or terraced houses. Currently, about 1% of all the vehicles in the city are either EV or plug-in hybrids. It's about in line with the rest of the country, though we'd obviously like to see that improve, and that's part of the reason we're here today. Some other useful bits of information, not directly related to EV, but they do link into our strategy in quite an important way later. York's got an outer ring road which has 6 park and ride facilities on it. The parking within the town centre is quite restricted, and we rely quite heavily on these park and rides to get tourists and commuters specifically into the town. These park and rides are serviced by the biggest zero-emission bus fleet in the UK. First York have a very large electric bus fleet. We run Optev Versas, and they've just taken receipt. I think it's 21 new double-deckers that are all electric. We also have the UK's first voluntary clean air zone. So within the city centre, all our buses have to be at least Euro 6. This helps us sort of ferry in all our commuters and up to 7 million tourists per year, which is a substantial amount for such a small little city. The park and rides are really sort of convenient. They're very cost effective, and given the small size of the city, it's a very quick way of getting into town. We've taken advantage of these, which I'll talk a bit more about later on as we get into the strategy. So at the start of our electric vehicle journey, York was quite a pioneer in the whole EV charging scene. We had one of the UK's first public charging networks, which we began installing in 2013. We've received OLEV Go Ultra Low City status. And when we first opened our network, our first year, we had 1,510 charging sessions, but that's rapidly built up over the years. By 2018, we were recording just under 14,000 charging sessions on what was quite a small network at the time. And I'll give you a quick peek at that network now. This is how we laid out a network originally. So the network originally consisted of 20 double 7 kilowatt fast charging points. These were mainly located in our Longstay car parks and a couple at the park and rides. And we also deployed a number of 50 kilowatt rapid chargers. It's worth noting that the rapid chargers were originally deployed mainly for bus use, but at the time we decided it was a good idea to allow public access to some of those chargers, and I'll just come to some of the problems that's caused us in a little while. It probably wasn't the best decision. Either way, by 2018, 14,000 charging sessions, we were very much at capacity, and this was one of the deciding points to get in place some kind of plan to develop our EV infrastructure further. It should be noted that the 2019 charging figures were a little bit lower. I'll sort of come to those reasons right now when we look at some of the lessons we learned from our original charging infrastructure. The first one is public charges are for the public, bus charges are for buses, never the twain shall meet. We had some real problems after the first couple of years as the number of charging sessions, the demand for charging increased, and as the buses aged a bit and the battery performance reduced, we started getting into some conflict with our rapid chargers. It's one thing for a car to pull up to a rapid charger and find a bus is using it, very inconvenient. It's probably a bit more serious when a bus turns up, having to charge between a route and finds there's a car blocking the charger. So our first lesson learned from our charge infrastructure was let's keep everything segregated, one set of chargers for one user group. Usability is key, and this sort of brings us on to the second real lesson learned. Quality is absolutely critical for building confidence in our EV charging network. Part of the reason why our 2019 charging figures were lower than 2018 is reliability. Clocking on for well, quite old kit by that point, and largely life expired. Reliability of our charging network was getting pretty poor. At one point in 2019, we had less than 50% of our chargers actually up and running at any one time. When we're all at capacity, this meant that people were really struggling to find charging spaces. We were getting a lot of complaints about it as well. So reliability is absolutely key. The reliability issue comes mainly from the early adoption of this kind of technology. I don't think the chargers we installed at the time are perhaps as durable and reliable as the ones you'd buy these days. A lot of the other local authorities have fallen into the same kind of problem here, in that there was funding available to install the chargers, but there was no official budget for maintaining or repairing these things. And so over time, they've just fallen into disrepair. Another issue we've had, and this kind of ties in with the bus lanes, is clear bay markings and signage, along with accessibility. The instinct when people were first starting these charging networks was to put chargers where it was cheap to do so and power was available. That doesn't necessarily make them the best place for a charging bay. Some of our chargers are in some obscure locations, such as actually within bus lanes, or in turning circles where you wouldn't expect to find them, and navigating to them can be quite difficult. The same goes with the signage and the bay markings. There's very little consistency, and this can be confusing. So one of the things we really wanted to focus on with our new strategy is to get some kind of consistency into our system, so it's the same charging experience whenever you go around the city. The third one is probably the most important of these, in that we can tailor our charger type to different user groups at different locations, and we base that charger selection on how long they're staying and where they're going to visit most. I'm going to talk some more about that in a little while, but that's probably the key lesson that we learned from our original attempt at a network, was that placement of the chargers and choosing the right type of charger for the right place is absolutely vital. The fourth lesson we learned is we really need a strategy, and consistency is key here. Just to have a structured system where we know where we're placing those chargers, why we're placing them, and that we have all the systems and infrastructure in place to keep them well maintained, serviced, and operational for our users. So that brings us up to date on our EV journey to just this year, where in March we completed and published our EV charging strategy. It's a 5-year strategy. Our main aims is to encourage uptake of EVs, electric vehicles in York, either for residents or for people visiting. 5 years gives us a good degree of certainty to work under. The recent announcement of the sale of combustion engines over, but by 2030, puts a bit more of a solid deadline on there. But until that point, we were very much sort of shooting in the dark if we went further than 5 years. We've got some good idea of how much the EV sales are increasing per year, and our own charging data since 2013 gives us a very good idea of how fast that uptake is occurring within York. The focus of the strategy again is to deliver a high quality, reliable charging network, and also ensure that there's a sufficient supply of charge points to meet demand. If we're going to encourage the uptake of electric vehicles, that's a given that must be there. People have to have confidence in the network, that they have to believe that when they go to a charge point, they won't always be full or they won't be out of order. And based on our lessons learned, we also want a financially stable network. And to do this, we're taking control of tariffs for our charging and using any funds generated from the charging process to pay for our annual fees, our annual back office fees, our maintenance fees, and also to prepare for renewing life expired kit at the end of sort of perhaps a 5 or 10-year period. We can also then forecast what we're going to need as we progress through the next 5 years and start working out a plan to continue the expansion right up to 2030 and beyond. One other element of this, and I'm going to come to this later, several times in fact, which is to ensure that residents without off-street parking are able to access reliable public charge points. This is a very common talking point around EV at the moment. I'm not going to talk about that now. I'm going to come back to it after we've looked at some more of the strategy. So just to set the scene a little bit, I want to talk about the barriers to EV ownership, the most common ones. These are things we're going to have to overcome if we're going to get the uptake in electric vehicles that we want in the city. The most common one by far is, people know, it's range anxiety. EVs have this reduced range over your conventional petrol and diesel engines. I think some people have a bit more of a bias and aren't really aware of the true range of EVs. And most of the machine, the range is very short, which may have been true for the old models, but we're getting there with the newer models of EVs now. Either way, main causes of range anxiety are arriving at a charger and finding it's broken or out of order, or it can't communicate with its back office system. Just charger availability in general, an oversubscribed network or an underdeveloped network with very few charge points in an area can quickly lead you into a situation where you've got no adequate charge point and you're running low on charge. Another problem that people have with it is the feel they need to be a lot more thorough in planning long distance journeys. And yes, if you go to an area where the network is underdeveloped, this is quite critical to know where and when you can charge. Here it is again, the hot potato, no off-street parking. There's definitely this sort of preconception that you have to have your own charger to be able to run an EV, and that if you don't have your own driveway, that charging can be difficult, and that somehow we have to rely on street parking. It's a bit of a misconception, really. We're going to go over some points about this on the reasons why relying on a home charger is not necessarily true. Just some comparison. Again, this is more a conceptual thing. Petrol and diesel engine cars, we're all used to a range of 300 or 400 miles on a full tank. Today's electric vehicles, they're pushing 200-mile ranges, and if you buy one of the more expensive models, you could possibly get that near 300. That's continuing to grow, and I expect to see that to continue to grow over the next 5 years. Petrol or diesel, well, you're looking at a 9-minute refuel on average at a petrol station. Manual refuel, you have to be holding onto the pump, you have to do it all yourself. Electric vehicles have longer recharge times, but at the same time, you can plug them in and leave them. And I think this is probably where some of the misconception occurs, that electrics are less convenient because you have to charge them more often and for longer. If we flip this around and look at where you can charge an electric vehicle, and we can start relying on destination charging, i.e. when you go to the supermarket or you park up in a car park, you can plug your vehicle and leave it. As long as those chargers are available whenever you go to a destination point, or at least some of those destination points, you can keep your car topped up without ever having to do a dedicated fueling session as you would a petrol or diesel. You couldn't park your car up outside outside work, for instance, and expect to come back and find someone's filled it with fuel. So by funding and providing a competent charging network, we can eventually get to the point where our residents traveling around the city, probably no more than 8 miles per journey, will find sufficient charge points wherever they're driving to charge their vehicle sufficiently so they wouldn't have to charge at home. This is just one of the ways we can overcome the feelings of reliance on a home charger, but there are other ways which we will discuss shortly. So as part of our strategy, we tried to break down our common charging users into different groups. We've got 3 broad categories based on where they're going and how long they're staying. They're quite simple. There's nothing complicated about this. Our first user group are long stayers. These are generally commuters, tourists. They're going to be using our long stay car parks and park and ride facilities. They are likely to stay on average for about 9 hours, so perhaps as short as 6, mainly all day, and they arrive at fairly predictable times, so we expect them to arrive in the mornings and stay till the evenings. I've also thrown into this group that elusive residents without off-street parking for reasons we'll discuss very shortly. Second group, short stayers. These are generally shoppers, again some tourists, business visitors. These are people visiting shopping centres, high streets. Dwell times between 30 minutes and 2 hours. They may stay longer. And they'll be visiting the location throughout the day. There'll be no sort of start and finish time. These can even go into the late evening, depending on what's nearby, what attractions they may be visiting. Their main need for the visit is more on visiting the shops, or could well be specifically for charging, and the shops may be just an optional extra. Our third user group are the don't stayers. These are people looking for a pit stop, through traffic, long distance drivers, commercial vehicles, perhaps something like taxis that require a fast turnaround to be able to continue their working day. Here they are again. The residents without off-street parking might also be visiting this kind of facility. What we're looking for here is very quick turnaround. This is where we're going to be looking at rapid and ultra-rapid charging. We'd like to see these placed on arterial routes, where we like to get the majority of the through traffic and long distance drivers, sort of our ring road, or areas that are very easy to reach for our residents. Dwell time, probably about 10 to 30 minutes, preferably as short as possible, depending on how fast they can charge their vehicle. They'll arrive when they're required to get a charge, or when it's convenient. Maybe they're just passing by. So that's our 3 user groups. And if we then pair those up with our charging technology, we get some very straightforward answers to what we're deploying. So long stay car parks, we're looking at 7 kilowatt fast chargers. These are one of the smallest chargers on the market, next to your sort of 3 kilowatt home chargers. Your average charge time for a car can be in the range of hours. So a good full charge may take you sort of 6 to 9 hours. It's certainly well enough, long enough to top up if you're a commuter and going to work for the day. You can plug in, leave your vehicle there all day. They're dual sockets. We don't need to install many units. They're actually quite cheap to install, low power requirements. So we don't need to concentrate too much on worrying about our grid connections. Plug in and leave is fantastic. The long charge time means it doesn't matter if we don't get more than 1 or 2 charging sessions a day. The people who will be using these will be paying for parking. Their main goal for arriving at these locations is to park their vehicle. The charging is almost a bonus, and it's that destination charging I've discussed already. It's more sort of the charge is available, so why not use it while I'm there? There's no overstay penalties. They can stay plugged into the charger all day. Our short stayers, we've opted for 50 kilowatt rapid chargers. They've been around for a while. You're looking at a full charge in around 90 minutes, depending on how big the battery is in your car. 30 minutes charge should give you a good 100 miles. So without too much of a delay, you can quite easily top up your vehicle if you need to. We expect these to do multiple charging sessions in a day, several different visitors over the course of the day. Because this is more of a recharge than a parking facility, we offer free parking at our rapid chargers, but we are including an overcharge penalty if they stay there too long, which will discourage bay blocking and using it as a free parking space. And finally, for our don't stayers, the 150 kilowatt ultra rapid chargers. There aren't many of these around at the moment. There aren't many vehicles that use them, at least their full potential currently. But there are more coming onto the market every day, and we're already seeing this year's EVs sort of opting and moving towards the 100 kilowatt charging capacity. And so we're going to see more and more use out of these ultra rapids. A full charge for your car, if you can accept the full 150 kilowatts, is about 30 minutes. 10 minutes gives you a 100-mile range. And next gen vehicles, we are expecting to be very into this kind of technology. We could get the highest number of charging sessions per charger out of these because of the fast turnaround. You're almost looking at a petrol station style usage. It's unlikely you'd leave your vehicle except to perhaps grab a coffee or check your emails. Again, we're offering the free parking for the short stay you'll be there, and an overstay charge will discourage bay blocking at these locations. So a bit of implementation. Currently, our budget on implementing the first phase of our plan is £4.2 million of investment from various bodies, which I'll look at in a moment. We're looking to replace all our existing chargers around the network with new kit, all supplied by a single supplier, maintained under a single supplier, and with a similar back office at every point. We're also then going to increase the number of chargers in parking spaces up to approximately 5% of all parking space in our Longstay car parks, where it's practical to do there. Some of you may see occasionally on the news that York spends part of the year underwater, so some of our car parks aren't exactly suitable for electric vehicle charging, but where we can put them in, we will do. This will equate to 310 fast charge points in total around the city, which is a huge jump up from our original 40. We're also going to be installing rapid chargers at existing locations. In the case of the less appropriate locations, we'll be putting those to rights, finding slightly more appropriate place for the chargers nearby. We'll also be installing a number of pairs of rapids where popular short stay locations such as Bishop Thorpe Road shops are located. Very popular shopping location, plenty of cafes and restaurants. Ideal location for a quick sort of 1 or 2 hour charge while you grab a coffee or a meal. Finally, and this is a pretty big one, we're constructing 3 ultra rapid charging hubs, which we know as hyper hubs. 2 of these will be on key arterial routes, and 1 of them will be in the city centre. And these, as we'll find out shortly, will act very much like your conventional service station. So our hyper hubs, 24-hour ultra rapid charging hubs. We've got a very low res little knock-up of roughly what they'll look like. It's essentially a canopy with solar panels generating about 102 kilowatts at peak. We're going to be running this alongside some Tesla battery storage. Chargers themselves aren't a very good match to solar without the battery being there. Additionally, chargers have a very high peak load and then tail off, whereas your solar panels will generate fairly consistent power all day, but at a much lower level. So the idea is we charge up the batteries, and we use that in 2 different ways. At one of our sites, Monk's Cross, we have a very ample grid connection, which is capable of running all the chargers simultaneously without breaking a sweat. So the battery at this location will help us to save money. We could perhaps charge it off peak, save the solar power for when we need it. At our second site, Poppleton, we're in a very different situation with our grid connection. We've actually only got 400 kilowatts available for nearly 800 kilowatts worth of charging equipment. So here the battery will be used for peak load shaving. We'll be charging it up off peak or during the day if we need to. We'll be using that battery to supplement our grid connection to ensure the charger can deliver its full load during the early part of its charging session where it's at its highest power demand. And then once that charging session's ended, the battery will recharge in preparation for the next user coming along. Each hub will consist of 4 ultra rapid 150 kilowatt chargers on one side, and on the opposite side 4 rapid 50 kilowatt chargers. Our original idea was that we were going to go all out 850 kilowatt chargers, but the grid connection for this kind of amount of equipment is prohibitively expensive at the moment. And we just didn't feel that in the 5-year lifespan that we were originally planning this, we get enough usage out of all the 150 kilowatts when there are so many vehicles on the market that can't take full use of that. 4 should be ample for at least the next 5 years. After that point, the sites have been engineered so they can accept the cabling for 150s if you want to upgrade. As far as air quality goes, each site, each of the 3 sites should save us around 166 tons of carbon per year. That's across the charging system as opposed to using a combustion engine vehicle. And that's also from solar generation as alternative to standard grid electricity. So this is our 2013 network. When we plug in all our new chargers, it starts to look a bit like this. So the blue diamonds, again, are 7 kilowatt fast chargers. Our hyper hubs are in 3 locations. I'll just grab my little pointer here. So up here we have Monk's Cross Park and Ride, which is located right next to the first hyper hub. Our second hyper hub is over here at Popperton Bar, again on the opposite side of the ring road. And our third hyper hub will be located city centre near the hospital, which is a very, very busy route. Gets a lot of traffic down there. We've expanded our network of rapid chargers as well to give reasonably good coverage around the city. And we've added a number of other fast charging sites to improve our offering around residential areas and through our long stay car parks. To fund all this, we've received a number of different funding sources. Our initial funding came from OLEV, Office for Low Emission Vehicles, and this is tied into our Go Ultra Low status. This was money specifically for investing in ultra rapid charging technology. We've also, to back that up, received money from ERDF, and this combined offer goes towards providing our hyper hubs, including the solar generation and battery storage, which was a key element of our European bid. Rest of our charging estate, so renewal of our fast chargers, mainly comes through the North Yorkshire LEP. We've also had a lot of technical support on that from West Yorkshire Combined Authority, who've run the Energy Accelerator programme, who assisted us with a lot of the electrical designs on the run up to going out to procurement for this one. We've obviously put in our own council funds to match fund against all these different pots as well. So we've just undertaken 2 procurement exercises, one for the hyper hubs and one for the rest of the EV estate. We're very, very happy with our choice of partners. So the main fast and rapid chargers, the upgrade to the estate, replacement of our existing kit, and the expansion to 5% parking bays will be done by BP Chargemaster, who've just rebranded as BP Pulse. This package of work includes our original installation requirements, so the 310 fast chargers and rapid chargers. They'll also be providing us our back office for the next 5 years. They'll also be maintaining all of our chargers. The back office offering comes with our contactless payments, access to, again, what was the Polar network, which has just been rebranded to BP Pulse, which is one of the largest charging networks. I think it's the largest charging network in the UK. The back office system also comes with 24-hour phone support. That's both for our operational staff and for users. And with all that lumped in, I believe we've got a very, very strong offering to keep our network running in good order and hit that quality mark that we wanted to hit. Our second partner is Evo Energy. They are specialists in solar and battery operation as well as EV charging, and they'll be delivering the hyper hubs. They're doing the full package from our grid connection and substation right through to the solar panels. And our first Mugs Cross hyper hub should be due to complete around the end of March 2021. Poppleton Bar around the end of June, and we're hoping for our third one down by the hospital, which should be a little later in the year. We're hoping around August to September, though that's still in the design phase at the moment. So why are we investing in EV charging? This is a common question. Local authorities have taken very different approaches to EV charging. Some prefer to just hand over this kind of work to commercial entities and just say, there you go, get on with it. As long as you provide it, we don't mind, we don't want the hassle. as a local authority, we believe we're very uniquely positioned to provide strategically located infrastructure. We own a lot of land on the inner city. You know, we own car parks, park and rides, lay-bys, smaller plots of land, and we can get things done in locations perhaps commercial entities can't. We can also tackle some of the more difficult business cases. Your commercial entities aren't going to want to look at non-profitable sites at the moment. They've got a business to run, whereas we can absorb some of those costs to provide a facility for residents that may not really be the best business case. We can also invest in things like ultra rapid charging. Given the cost of those units, that's a tough nut to crack for your commercial companies at the moment. The investment is very large and the usage is potentially quite low at the moment. We can control our tariffs. This is very important, we believe, for growing EV in York. We have to ensure that this is affordable for our residents. And controlling the tariffs both increases competition with the commercial entities, and we can ensure we're giving our customers or our residents good value for money. We can also ensure that our core network coverage is delivered. And again, if we left this to private companies, there's no guarantee they would place charges in all the places we want them or that our residents want them. And so this gives us a good opportunity to act to make sure we've covered our bases and make sure that coverage is complete. So why not invite commercial providers? Well, we are doing. We totally welcome commercial investment in the city alongside our own. We're not there to be the sole supplier. We've already had plenty of interest and investment from the Polar Network, Instavolt, several other suppliers who are installing charge points, things like supermarkets, pub chains, private car parks, and housing developments. So we're seeing these popping up all over the place. We're also expecting some of these companies to be developing the more arterial routes outside the main city. So things like the A64, which is our main route into York, where we're hoping to see commercial companies coming in there and delivering their own versions of our hyperhubs, sort of ultra rapid and rapid charging stations for your long distance travelers. So we are encouraging commercial providers. By encouraging them to invest in York, we're going to see a much faster charger rollout rate across the city. We can't and don't want to do everything ourselves. They will fill in the gaps. They will hit the sites that we won't have the opportunity to. Again, supermarkets are a fantastic example of this. You're seeing rapid chargers popping up at supermarkets quite regularly now. Your average stay at a supermarket is probably between 30 minutes and an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And that's an ideal time to receive a rapid charge. We're also encouraging this sort of idea of consumer choice. It helps our residents to have the choice of network. Although the Polar network that we'll be on is great size-wise for the UK, it may not be suitable for everyone. People may have a better network they want to be part of that just suits their lifestyle, that may be more convenient for them for the places they travel. Also, the commercial providers are going to give us much better geographical spread throughout the city that we wouldn't be able to achieve by ourselves. So we're looking at around 5% fast chargers in our own car parks, but we've also included planning conditions that all new developments must include 5% of parking spaces with a fast charger in them, or an equivalent offering of rapid chargers that would service roughly the same number of vehicles. This is going to build on our opportunities for destination charging. The more places you can go and charge, the less reliance you've got on a single charging or a home charging unit. So this is another reason why we really want commercial investment in chargers in the city. So here's the elephant in the room, the discussion around on-street charging. We have not included on-street charging in our strategy for a number of reasons at the moment. Firstly, we've spent a very long time removing clutter from our footpaths. We've taken lamp posts and benches and moved them to the back of the footpath to free up room for buggies, wheelchairs, pushchairs, just generally declutter the street. We've got private parking for a charger that people want to put in what is a shared parking area. Our terrace streets all use a permit system. You have a zoned permit, any resident can park anywhere in that zone. But if you go now and install an EV charger in there for the one EV user or the two EV users in a street, you're now giving them a private parking facility in a shared parking area. This is going to cause some conflict. It's also going to mean that this charger is going to have very limited use. You're going to have one user plugged into it overnight. They'll probably still be there in the morning. And given the fact that it's a zone permit area, it's very unlikely anyone's going to come and use it during the day. So we're essentially installing a single charger to be used by one person. And what happens if they sell their car? Well, we've now got a maintenance liability. We've got a charger sat in the ground that no one's using and no one can use unless they hold a permit. So can we offer an alternative? Well, I think we already have. We've already discussed the idea of destination charging, which is one alternative. Another is we've got a whole load of long stay car parks full of 7 kilowatt fast chargers that empty out come 6 p.m., which just so happens with the time that people come home from work normally. So what we're doing is offering our residents a £20 a year permit to just go and park in our car parks overnight and use our fast charging facilities. And the map here shows roughly, with the blue circles, 10-minute walk time from any of our charging facilities. So although it's not perfect, we don't have full coverage, we're already putting out a fairly decent offer for those people that'd like to leave their vehicle overnight and have their car ready to use in the morning. So what if we expand that a bit further and take this model out to what is a service station model? I should drive my car to a service station and fill it with petrol. No one has a problem with that. So what happens if we did that with our rapid and ultra rapid chargers? This map shows roughly 10-minute drive to all our rapids and ultra rapids. And as you can see, coverage is looking really good now. I don't think anyone would have an issue with driving their car for 10 minutes to go and fill their car with petrol or diesel. Perhaps you'd spend 10 minutes there, perhaps you'd spend 15 minutes there. With an ultra rapid charger, we can achieve those kind of times, and that's only going to get better as EVs improve their charge rates. So this is what we're proposing, at least at this stage, as an alternative to our on-street parking. And we think this is a very sensible approach to it in terms of cost and convenience, with a little bit of information spread on destination charging and the alternatives to home charging. We think we've got quite a good solution, and this will only improve as we improve our fast charger coverage. I'm going to leave it there for now and just open this up to questions. I've got Andrew Ledbetter here, who dealt with the writing of the original strategy, to help me assist any questions on that front. I've also got Lucy Atkinson here, who's a sustainability project manager. She's involved in some of the related projects to our EV strategy, which include things like modal shift, electric scooters, and some active travel responses to air quality. So I'll hand this over to Connor now. I think he's going to moderate, and thank you very much.
I've selected a number of questions because we've quite a few come in. I'm going to read them out. Given that our session is due to end at 4 o'clock, a few minutes for each of the questions, if that's all right, but I'll leave it open to any. The question is coming regarding the reliability of charging points. What were the most common causes of failure?
Andrew, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, hi everybody. Andrew Ledbetter, EV Strategy. So the actual causes of failure in terms of the equipment itself were quite myriad, but the root cause of it was that we didn't have an effective preventative maintenance program in place, and that's is a pretty obvious point that I think any of us could flag up. But the nuance in York is that we had a hardware supplier, a back office supplier, and a maintenance provider who were all and that relationship required a lot more management than we anticipated it would do. And over the course of time, the ability of the maintenance company to fix what were becoming increasingly difficult technical issues with the hardware just basically meant the whole system kind of fell down. So going forward, what we've done is we've streamlined our arrangement. So we've got a single provider of back office hardware and maintenance. And as Stuart said, we've also got funding in place to ensure that going.
I think we lost Andrew. Do you want to carry on, Connor?
No worries. I'll again leave this open to anybody to answer. The government has announced that gas boilers manufactured after 2030 must be hydrogen. Does this not imply that the hydrogen economy is on its way and that EV cars will be replaced by hydrogen powered ones with long ranges and quick refilling times?
If he's back, this one's for Andrew again.
Yeah, I can pick that one up, Stuart. Yes, it implies that the hydrogen economy is beginning to move forward. No, it doesn't necessarily imply that the private car market is going to move to hydrogen. Certainly, if you recall, our strategy period is up until 2025. We don't see any serious encroachment into the private car market up to 2025. There's a big question mark over what role hydrogen fuel cell will play within the car market going forward. Generally, the market view is that for heavy vehicles, it's likely to become one of the answers. But I mean, different car manufacturers have taken a slightly different position on this. Several of them have ruled out fuel cell from the car market entirely. Some have kept a watching brief on it, but there aren't many companies at all that are saying it's going to be a significant portion of the car market. So I guess that's kind of a twofold answer. Up until 25, we don't see any role, but there's still a big question mark going forward as the role of hydrogen fuel cell within the car market. The reason really for that, if you wind back a decade, when fuel cell was anticipated to be making the gains that pure electric is currently, they held some significant advantages over battery electric in terms of range, refill time, and the applicability across a number of different vehicles. In that intervening decade, battery electric development has basically leapfrogged fuel cell, which meant that battery electric is now gaining significant market share, whereas fuel cell isn't currently. We only have to look at the offering from Hyundai, Nexo, £65,000 vehicle, which isn't on general release. You can get hold of one if you go and talk nicely to Hyundai, but you can't walk into your local dealership and just order one of those and expect it to be on the forecourt. Whereas with your battery electric offerings, they're available today, and that's where the bulk of R&D funding is going in. So, yeah, I guess just to wrap up that answer, there's a potential role for hydrogen in domestic heating. There might be a role for hydrogen in heavy goods vehicles. It's possible that there's some interaction then with the car market. But if that comes about, we're looking at 2030 onwards, definitely not within the next 5 years.
Thank you very much for that, Andrew. I'm trying to roll a few questions into one to save the time. Lucy, I think this is going to be heavily aimed towards the work that you're doing. We've had a number of questions about e-scooters and electric alternate vehicles. So if you'd like to give an insight into what we're doing there.
Yeah, thanks, Connor.
That might be helpful.
Thanks, Stuart. So yeah, we are participating in the Department of Transport's e-scooter trials that you might have heard of. So just to give a kind of brief overview, we're looking at providing kind of short-term rental of e-scooters. So we've got multiple locations, kind of parking bays. We've gone for more of kind of a docked system where e-scooters can be picked up and dropped off. We've got quite a small service area, as you can see kind of from the map at the minute, but we're looking to kind of gradually expand this network to include the whole city. And I guess this kind of links to more of kind of, as Stuart mentioned, the wider work we're doing around promoting active and sustainable travel. We're looking at where we can place the parking locations to encourage kind of use of our park and ride sites, and also linking with the train station, making sure kind of people are able to get to their destinations more easily as well. We're also looking to introduce e-bikes into the scheme in early 2021 for those that maybe aren't as confident in using an e-scooter. Were there any other specific questions, Connor?
Most of it sort of surrounding, obviously, consideration of e-scooters, e-bikes, any other sort of alternatives to car.
Oh yeah, I lost you a bit, but yeah, I guess kind of this builds into our kind of wider strategy in terms of our active and sustainable travel and kind of cycle provision as well across the city. For private cycle parking. And the work that our iTravel team do with businesses in York and encouraging kind of travel planning for employees. So there's quite a few different areas that the council are looking at in terms of promoting, I guess non-private ownership of vehicles.
For answering that. Again, an open question for anybody to answer. In regards to long-stay car parks, will the cost of electricity parking?
We lost that a little bit, Connor. What was the last part of that question?
Sorry. In regards to long-stay car parks, will the cost of electricity be charged alongside parking?
Yes, so we're setting our fast charger rate for long stay car parks lower than our rapid and ultra rapid, but users will be expected to pay for parking. The majority of people using a fast charger, a long stay car park, are going there for the primary purpose of parking. If they wanted a short duration charge, we have rapid chargers and ultra rapids available for them. I don't know if Andrew wants to weigh in on this a little bit more on the workings behind it, but essentially, yes, we will be charging for parking for fast charger use.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. So this is a response to lessons learned from our first network, and also the tipping point. So in 2013, that network was rolled out to encourage early adopters. So obviously, there's a lot of kind of incentives built into that, which included free parking. We're now at a tipping point where the EV market is moving from early adopter into mainstream, and we know the direction of travel up to 2030. So what we're now looking to do is actually make sure that if somebody's using one of our fast charge points, that they actually need to be using it. And the best way to encourage that is to charge parking fees. So we definitely saw behaviour in the past couple of years where people were plugging into a charge point, getting a kilowatt hour or less from that charge point in order to gain free parking in the city centre. And we don't think that's the way forward. So we are bringing in standard car parking charges for all the fast chargers. As Stuart's mentioned, the only point with that is that we will provide free parking overnight to residents. So because we're not providing an on-street charger, we're providing a charger very close by in a car park. We obviously don't think it's reasonable for residents to be out of pocket paying car parking fees when they would have had free on-street parking. So we're waiving the parking fees for that group. But for everybody else, yeah, you will be charged a parking fee at any of the fast charge points.
Very much, Andrew. A question has come in, and I believe any of you. What do the petrol station owners think about York Council potentially encroaching business?
I think I can pick that one up as well. So as Stuart mentioned, we all know the direction of travel here, and we know that the oil majors are going to be introducing rapid and ultra rapid charging facilities over the coming years. The reality of that is, if you look at the rollout, for instance, of the Shell network, at the moment it's heavily swayed towards the southeast. So yes, we know that over time, the petrol station model will begin to gain traction. But currently, if we approached any of those traditional players and asked them to come to York and put the level of investment in that we're talking about, we know that none of them would be interested. So currently, there's no competition at all. They're not concerned at all about what we're doing. We're acting because there's market failure. That's why we're doing this at the moment. We will not have these facilities available if we don't roll them out. Going forward, as we've mentioned in the presentation, we will be encouraging those traditional players to come into the city, because we recognise that, as time goes on, we need as many facilities as possible, and we're not looking to be the only provider in York. But that's for the time being. There's no tension at all between us and the more traditional providers.
So much, Andrew. We've had quite a few questions sort of been put in. We seem to be a long way ahead of other cities our size. Are we sharing with other local authorities and cities to encourage them to do the same thing?
Yeah, totally. We're entirely open to sharing what we know, what we've learned, what we've fallen over on with other local authorities. We would welcome anyone to come and have a chat anytime you like. We are Go Ultra Low City, so part of our conditions of doing that as such is that we are here as an exemplar city to share our knowledge. We would welcome anyone to come and sit down and have a chat with us about their plans and see how we can adapt our model to fit their circumstances, and we've already had quite a lot of takers on that.
I think just to add to that as well, we've worked with the Energy Saving Trust, who at the moment have a funded programme where they can work with local authorities at no cost, which is brilliant. And through the Energy Saving Trust, we've been put into contact with half a dozen local authorities and a combined authority as well. It's quite a big area, and we're providing advice to all those areas currently via the Energy Saving Trust.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Questions come in asking, is inductive charging feasible?
I think that's one for me, Stuart.
Definitely, off you go.
Yeah, inductive charging, yes, it is feasible. At the moment, in terms of the car market, inductive charging is starting to creep in, basically as a bit of a bit of a point of differentiation, a bit of an offer, really, on some of the more expensive executive cars. It's very well matched with home charging. So if you've got off-street charging ability, it is a good match with that. We've seen some progress now with commercial vehicles where they're up to substantial power transfers. So again, yeah, that's an emerging market. And there's also quite a good overlap with black cab. I think at the moment the thing is that you obviously need an additional system on the floor of the car, which is added expense. So car manufacturers aren't mad keen on the system because it's another thing for them to have to integrate into it. So we're seeing it coming forward a little bit, but we think that the plug-in system is gonna remain in place for a significant amount of time. And I think particularly in terms of public charging, for the foreseeable future, we don't foresee any complaints from customers around us offering a plug-in system. I don't think that we've got an issue there. I think inductive will be more on a case-specific basis.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I'm going to read this as the last question to sort of finalize this webinar. Have we factored in when doing the product testing for the charger, a range of weather conditions? Are all of the new ultra rapid chargers going to be suitable for all conditions?
Yes, I can pick that one up. So in terms of our supply partners, we've got BP Pulse doing all our fast and rapid chargers throughout the city. And then at the hyper hubs, the rapid and ultra rapid chargers are ABB. Now, both of those manufacturers have a very good reputation in terms of product testing, product development, have a significant amount of hardware out in the field. So they've got real world experience as well, going back quite a long time. Particularly in the case of ABB, they've been selected by the premier private ultra rapid charging providers. So the ABB product is pretty much the premier product in the market, and they're installed worldwide, but including Northern Europe, kind of Scandinavian temperatures, into Central Europe with the temperatures that they see there. So yeah, all of our kit is more than fit for purpose for UK weather conditions.
Brilliant, Andrew. Thank you so much. Because we've had over 50 questions come in, after the session, we'll intend to send out a key fact sheet to try and cover as many as possible to delegates, just so everybody's received an answer. I'd like to thank you all for attending the webinar today. It's been fantastic turnout, and give special thanks to all of the panelists for taking the time today to discuss our EV strategy and what we are doing in York. This is the end of the webinar, and I'd like to thank you all so much for attending. Enjoy the rest of your days now.
Thank you, Carla.